One of the questions that came out on do not murder was in Matthew's gospel, where it says, you're not to hate someone without cause, or be angry rather at someone without cause. And it talks particularly about brother and sister in the version that we use at church. And the question is that Christians that we're not to be angry with, or does the brother and sister generally mean everybody? Well, I've looked at that. I'm not convinced that it only means Christian brothers and sisters, but I do think that there is a particular error in us being angry at Christian brothers and sisters without cause. So that's a particular offence. If you like, it's sort of even greater than being angry at someone who isn't a Christian. But I don't think it's exclusively that. It seems to me that the whole anger without cause, without a just cause, is a thing that stirs the heart to produce murderous thoughts in us. So I don't think it's exclusive. The other question was, and it's a really big question, and answering just this on camera is a little worrying for me, because it's a big issue. God says you should not murder, but then you do get in the Bible where God sends Israel, particularly into war situations, and they are to destroy the enemy, to kill the enemy. What's the answer to that? I think that's a big question. I think there's a number of answers. One, God is the one that says what murder is and what murder isn't. God is the one that says what is permissible in taking life and what isn't. So we've got to, whatever he says is right. But within those situations of the nation of Israel going to war, it was a nation of Israel. We don't have that nation anymore. Christians aren't a particular nation. We come from all nations. So we don't, as Christians, go to war and take lives. So we've got to remember that. The other thing is that they were God's enemies in those days. And partly what's going on in that slaughter of the enemies of God is showing just what happens eternally. There is an eternal death. People will in fact die eternally and will be under God's judgment. And partly what was going on with Israel as a nation going to war and taking lives is actually showing that God's people will win and the enemies of God will be judged. So it's a physical reality and picture of the reality of the judgment of God itself. So that's what those warnings are. But let's be very careful before we take the Old Testament and the words that are spoken to a nation back in the Old Testament and bring them to Christians today are to go to war and to kill their enemy, because that's not the case. Jesus has translated these commandments. We listen to the commandments through the translation of Jesus, who says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and love your neighbour as yourself. So I think that's how I would try to answer that question.